I'm Amber Collins, 28, and my younger sister Stephanie has always been competitive. Growing up in Boston, everything was a contest, grades, friends, even parental attention. But I never imagined she'd betray me by seducing Ryan, the man I planned to marry. The worst part? She didn't even love him. She just couldn't stand seeing me happy. What she didn't expect was my response when he realized his mistake. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe to hear how I made my sister watch the man she stole fall back in love with me. Stephanie and I grew up in a comfortable suburb just outside of Boston. Only 2 years apart, people often mistook us for twins despite our different appearances. I inherited our mother's blonde hair and blue eyes, while Stephanie got our father's dark features. Our parents always insisted they loved us equally, but Stephanie never seemed to believe it. From the moment she could walk, Stephanie was always grabbing my toys. In elementary school, she'd copy my science projects. In high school, she dated my ex-boyfriend just 2 weeks after we broke up. I always chalked it up to typical sibling rivalry, never imagining how far she would eventually go. After college, I landed a marketing position at Tech Future, a promising startup in downtown Boston. I worked my way up to executive level within 3 years, earning respect in the industry and finally feeling like I was carving out my own identity separate from our childhood competition. I had my own apartment in the South End, a growing circle of friends, and a career I was passionate about. For once, Stephanie and I weren't directly competing, as she pursued a teaching career instead. I met Ryan Mitchell at Caffeine Dreams, a cozy coffee shop near my office. I was rushing to grab my usual latte before a meeting when I collided with him, spilling his Americano all over his crisp white shirt and navy blue tie. Mortified, I insisted on paying for dry cleaning, but he just laughed it off and asked for my number instead. He called that same evening, and we arranged our first date for the following Friday. Ryan was everything I'd been looking for. At 30, he was established in his career as an architect at a prestigious firm, intelligent without being arrogant, and had a dry sense of humor that perfectly complemented mine. He was tall with sandy brown hair that always looked slightly windswept, warm hazel eyes, and a smile that made my heart skip. Our relationship progressed naturally. After 3 months, we were spending most nights together, either at my place or his loft in Beacon Hill. At 6 months, we were discussing future plans, contemplating moving in together. And I'd even caught myself browsing engagement rings online. I introduced Ryan to my family at a Sunday dinner where everyone seemed to adore him, especially Stephanie. At first, I thought Stephanie was just being friendly. She asked Ryan about his work, laughed at all his jokes, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know the man who had captured my heart. I was actually relieved, thinking maybe we'd finally moved past our childhood rivalry. My parents commented on how nice it was to see us getting along so well as adults. But during the third family dinner, something fell off. Stephanie had dressed up more than usual, wearing a low-cut blouse and designer jeans I recognized from my own closet, borrowed without asking. As usual, she positioned herself next to Ryan at the table, constantly finding excuses to touch his arm or shoulder during conversation. When Ryan mentioned his love for hiking, Stephanie immediately proclaimed it was her passion too, despite having complained about the single-nature walk we'd taken as a family years ago. "You two should check out Blue Hill sometime," she suggested, completely excluding me from the activity. "I know all the best trails." Ryan, ever polite, just smiled and said, "That sounds great. Amber and I have been meaning to do more outdoor activities together." I noticed the flash of annoyance in Stephanie's eyes when he included me, but I dismissed it. Later that night, as Ryan and I drove home, I casually mentioned Stephanie's behavior. "She seems to really like you," I said, trying to keep my tone light. Ryan shrugged. "She's nice." I'm glad your family approves of me. They all love you, I replied, pushing away the nagging feeling that Stephanie's interest went beyond sisterly approval. As the weeks passed, Ryan and I grew closer. We established our favorite restaurants, developed inside jokes, and formed those little habits that make a relationship feel like home. He kept a toothbrush at my place, and I had a drawer at his. We talked about eventually buying a house together, maybe in Cambridge or Somerville, somewhere with a yard for the dog we both wanted. I was happier than I'd ever been, completely unaware that my perfect relationship was about to be systematically dismantled by the person who should have been most protective of my happiness, my own sister. The first clear sign something was wrong came when Stephanie started appearing at places Ryan and I frequented. I'd mentioned our Saturday morning ritual of breakfast at the Friendly Toast in Cambridge, and suddenly Stephanie was there, claiming she just happened to be in the neighborhood and asking to join us. The same thing happened when we went to a wine tasting event I'd told my parents about. And again, when we attended an architecture exhibit Ryan had been excited about for months. What are the odds? Stephanie would say with a laugh that never quite reached her eyes. Boston can feel so small sometimes. But Boston isn't that small, and the coincidences were becoming too frequent to ignore. Then I noticed the text messages. Ryan and I were comfortable using each other's phones, nothing to hide, we'd both said. One evening while he was in the shower, his phone lit up with a message from Stephanie. Can't wait to get your opinion on those design books tomorrow. Our secret, winky face. When Ryan returned, I asked him about it, trying to keep my voice casual despite the unease growing in my stomach. Oh, Stephanie asked for some architecture book recommendations, he explained. She's thinking of redecorating her apartment and wanted professional advice. I offered to meet her for coffee to discuss it, and you didn't mention this to me because... I asked, hating how jealous I suddenly felt. Ryan kissed my forehead. It wasn't a secret, Amber. It just didn't seem important enough to mention. She's your sister, and I'm just trying to be nice to your family. I wanted to believe him. After all, this was Ryan honest. Straightforward Ryan who'd never given me any reason to doubt him. And this was my sister who, despite our competitive history, surely wouldn't cross that line. I pushed my concerns aside and decided to trust both of them. But the coffee meeting turned into regular text conversations. Stephanie began calling Ryan directly instead of going through me for family events. When I checked Ryan's phone again, feeling guilty for my suspicion but unable to shake it, I found dozens of messages between them, many containing inside jokes I wasn't part of. As Ryan started becoming more distant, working late more often and seeming distracted when we were together, my friend Jessica voiced the concern I'd been afraid to acknowledge. I don't want to cause problems, Jessica said during our lunch break, but I saw Ryan and Stephanie at Tat Bakery yesterday. They looked close. He had his hand on her back when they were ordering. My stomach dropped. They're just friends, I said automatically, though the words sounded hollow even to me. Maybe, Jessica replied. Unconvinced. But friends don't usually look at each other the way they were looking at each other. I'm sorry, Amber, but as your friend, I thought you should know. That night, I confronted Ryan again, this time more directly. Is there something going on between you and Stephanie? Ryan's expression shifted from surprise to guilt before settling into careful neutrality. Of course not. She's your sister, Amber. That's not an answer, I pressed. You've been distant. You're texting her constantly. Jessica saw you together at Tat. And you never mentioned meeting her. Ryan sighed, running a hand through his hair. Stephanie's been going through some stuff. She didn't want to burden you with it because she knows how busy you are with work. I've just been trying to be supportive. What stuff? I demanded. She should really be the one to tell you, he hedged. It's personal. The family dinner that weekend was unbearable. Stephanie arrived wearing a dress nearly identical to one she'd seen me wear on a date with Ryan. She positioned herself beside him again, laughing too loudly at his jokes. touching his arm at every opportunity. At one point, she leaned over to whisper something in his ear that made him smile in a way that twisted my heart. My mother noticed my discomfort and followed me into the kitchen when I went to refill my water glass. "Is everything okay between you and Ryan?" she asked, concern etching her features. "Everything's fine," I lied. "Just stressed about work." Her eyes drifted to the dining room, where Stephanie was showing Ryan something on her phone, their heads close together. "Stephanie seems quite taken with him," she observed carefully. "They're friends." I repeated the line I was beginning to hate. My mother squeezed my arm. "Just be careful, sweetheart. You know how Stephanie can get when she wants something." After dinner, I pulled Stephanie aside while Ryan helped my father with the dishes. "What's going on with you and Ryan?" I asked bluntly. Stephanie's eyes widened with practiced innocence. "What do you mean?" "You know exactly what I mean. The texts, the secret meetings, the constant flirting." "You're my sister, Steph." "You're being paranoid," she scoffed. "Ryan and I are friends." "Is that a crime now?" "God, Amber, you always think everyone's trying to take your things. Some things never change from when we were kids." "He's not a thing, he's my boyfriend," I said, anger rising. "And you're crossing boundaries. If Ryan has a problem with our friendship, he can tell me himself," she snapped. "Maybe you should ask yourself why you're so insecure. Ryan's a grown man who can decide who he wants to be friends with." I left the conversation feeling like I was the unreasonable one, questioning my own perceptions. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe this was all innocent. And my childhood history with Stephanie was coloring my interpretation of events. But as the weeks passed, Ryan became increasingly distant. Our date nights became less frequent. He started traveling more for work, at least that's what he claimed. When we were together, he was often distracted, checking his phone and smiling at messages I could only assume were from her. I was losing him, and I didn't know how to stop it. The evidence I couldn't ignore came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I'd left work early with a migraine and was heading to Ryan's apartment with soup from his favorite deli, hoping to surprise him since he'd called in sick that morning. As I approached his building, I spotted them through the window of a cafe across the street, Ryan and Stephanie sitting close together, his hand covering hers on the table. There was an intimacy to their posture that made me physically ill. I stood in the rain, soup growing cold in my hands, watching them through the glass for nearly 10 minutes. They never saw me. When Stephanie reached up to touch Ryan's face, I finally turned away and went home, soaked and shivering more from shock than from the rain. That night, I confronted Ryan at my apartment. I didn't scream or throw things. I simply showed him the photos I'd taken from across the street and asked for the truth. The fight that followed was both devastating and revealing. Ryan admitted that Stephanie had been pursuing him for weeks, showing up at his workplace, calling him constantly, confiding in him about her problems. "I never meant for it to go this far," he insisted, pacing my living room. "I was trying to let her down gently. I didn't want to cause drama in your family." "So, instead you started an emotional affair with my sister?" I asked incredulously. "It's not an affair. We haven't done anything physical," he protested, though his face told me he wasn't being entirely truthful. "She's going through a really hard time, Amber. She feels like she's always in your shadow, like she can never measure up. She's lonely and struggling, and that's your responsibility to fix because..." Ryan looked away. I felt sorry for her. And flattered, I guess. "But I love you, Amber. Only you." I wanted to believe him. Despite everything, I still loved him. So I made a decision that would come back to haunt me. If that's true, then you need to set clear boundaries with Stephanie. No more private meetings, no more constant texting. If she needs support, she can get it from friends or a therapist, not my boyfriend. Ryan agreed readily, seeming relieved that I was willing to work through this. We spent that night reconnecting. And I foolishly believed we had weathered the storm. The next day, Stephanie called and asked to meet for coffee. Thinking this was my chance to clear the air between us, I agreed. Ryan told me you saw us yesterday, she began without preamble when we sat down. I know how it must have looked, but it's not what you think. Then what is it? I asked, trying to keep my voice level. Stephanie's eyes filled with tears. I've been going through a really hard time. My last relationship ended terribly. I lost my best friend in the fallout. Work has been awful. I just needed someone to talk to, and Ryan was kind enough to listen. There are therapists for that, I pointed out. Or friends. Or your actual sister. You're always so busy with your perfect life, she said, a hint of bitterness seeping through. Your amazing job, your gorgeous apartment, your handsome boyfriend. I didn't want to burden you with my problems. So instead you burden my boyfriend? The one good thing in my life that you haven't tried to compete with or take from me. Stephanie looked genuinely hurt. Is that really how you see me? As someone who just wants to take things from you? I felt a twinge of guilt. Our history speaks for itself, Steph. I've never had what you have, she said quietly. You've always been the successful one, the pretty one, the one who gets the great guys. Just once, I want to know what that feels like. Her vulnerability seemed genuine, and against my better judgment, I felt myself softening. If you're lonely, I can help you meet someone. But it can't be Ryan. Stephanie wiped her eyes and nodded. I know. I'm sorry if I crossed a line. It won't happen again. For 2 weeks, things seemed to improve. Ryan was more attentive. Stephanie kept her distance, and I started to believe we could all move past this uncomfortable episode. I even helped Stephanie set up a dating profile and introduced her to a colleague I thought might be compatible with her. Then came the day that shattered everything. I had a presentation that was suddenly rescheduled, allowing me to leave work 3 hours earlier than expected. Deciding to surprise Ryan, I picked up takeout from our favorite Thai place and headed to his apartment. I still had his key, so I let myself in quietly, thinking he might be napping since he wasn't answering texts. The sounds from the bedroom left no doubt about what was happening. Still, some masochistic impulse propelled me forward, needing to see with my own eyes what my heart already knew. I pushed open the bedroom door to find Ryan and Stephanie tangled together in his bed, so engrossed in each other they didn't notice me until I dropped the takeout bags on the floor. Their expressions as they scrambled to cover themselves are forever etched in my memory, Ryan's shock and shame. Stephanie's initial fear quickly morphing into something close to triumph before she managed to arrange her features into fake remorse. Amber, Ryan gasped. I can explain. Don't bother, I said, surprised by how calm I sounded when everything inside me was shattering. I think this explains itself. Stephanie clutched the sheet to her chest. Amber, I'm so sorry. It just happened. We never meant to hurt you. The carefully rehearsed quality of her apology made it clear this wasn't a one-time mistake. This had been going on for some time, right under my nose, while I was trying to help her find someone of her own. I turned and walked out without another word, ignoring their calls as I left the apartment. It wasn't until I was safely in my car that I allowed myself to break down, sobbing until I could barely breathe. The ultimate betrayal by the two people who should have loved me most, crushing me from the inside out. The weeks following my discovery were some of the darkest of my life. Ryan called incessantly, leaving tearful voicemails begging for forgiveness, claiming it had been a terrible mistake and Stephanie had seduced him. Stephanie, meanwhile, cycled between apologizing profusely and suggesting that perhaps it was meant to be and I should try to be happy for them. I blocked both their numbers. The family fallout was nearly as painful as the betrayal itself. When my parents found out, they were horrified, but their response was frustratingly diplomatic. We can't take sides between our daughters, my mother said during a tense conversation in their kitchen. What Stephanie did was wrong, but she's still our child. She slept with my boyfriend. Mom, I said, incredulous. How is there not a side to take here? My father looked deeply uncomfortable. We've asked Stephanie not to bring Ryan to family gatherings out of respect for you, but we can't cut her off. We're hoping that with time, you two can find a way to repair your relationship." "There is no relationship to repair," I replied coldly. "She's dead to me." I stopped attending family dinners, spending holidays with friends instead. The isolation was crushing. I'd lost not only my boyfriend and sister in one fell swoop, but also the comfortable family structure I'd always taken for granted. Through mutual friends, I learned that Ryan and Stephanie were officially dating. Jessica reluctantly told me she'd seen them together at restaurants and parties, acting like a normal couple without a hint of shame. The thought of them building a relationship on the ruins of mine made me physically ill. "There's something else," Jessica said hesitantly during one of our lunch meetings. "Ellie from accounting overheard Stephanie at Newberry Street Salon last week. She was telling her stylist that she'd been planning to get Ryan away from you for months. That she said you always got everything, and she deserved to have something for herself for once." The confirmation of Stephanie's deliberate sabotage was both devastating and strangely validating. This hadn't been an accident or a moment of weakness. My sister had systematically targeted my relationship out of pure jealousy and spite. Even more disturbing was learning through another friend that Stephanie had pursued other boyfriends of mine in the past, though unsuccessfully. This was apparently just the first time she'd managed to succeed in her campaign to take something that belonged to me. My work suffered as I struggled with depression and betrayal. I took a 2-week leave of absence, barely leaving my apartment, surviving on delivery food and barely sleeping. When I returned to the office, I was a shell of my former self, going through the motions without any of the passion that had previously driven my career. The worst part was the realization, through bits of information from mutual acquaintances, that Stephanie didn't even truly care for Ryan. She'd been seen flirting with other men when he wasn't around, complaining that he was too boring and not as successful as she'd hoped. It became increasingly clear that she had wanted him simply because he was mine, and once she had him, the victory was more important than the actual relationship. One night, after too much wine and scrolling through old photos I should have deleted, I found myself writing a long email to Stephanie. I poured out years of hurt, not just from this betrayal, but from a lifetime of competition and jealousy. I wrote about how I'd always tried to be a good sister despite her constant attempts to undermine me. I asked her what I had ever done to make her hate me so much that she would deliberately destroy the one relationship that had brought me true happiness. I never sent it. Instead, I printed it out, read it once more, and then burned it in my kitchen sink, watching the flames consume years of pain and resentment. As the last embers died, I made a decision. Stephanie had taken enough from me. She had stolen my boyfriend, damaged my relationship with my parents, and robbed me of my happiness. But I would not let her take my dignity or my future. That night, I deleted all photos of Ryan from my phone and social media. I rearranged my apartment, getting rid of anything that reminded me of him. I joined a gym, signed up for therapy, and recommitted to my career. If Stephanie wanted to see me broken, I would deny her that satisfaction. The road to recovery wasn't easy or quick. There were still nights I cried myself to sleep, days when getting out of bed seemed impossible. But slowly, painfully, I started to rebuild my life without Ryan or Stephanie in it. I developed new friendships, explored parts of Boston I'd never visited, took weekend trips to places Ryan and I had never been. 6 months after the betrayal, I was having dinner with Jessica when she hesitantly brought up a rumor she'd heard. "I probably shouldn't tell you this," she said, twirling pasta around her fork nervously. "But I thought you might want to know. Apparently, Ryan and Stephanie broke up. It was pretty ugly from what I heard. He accused her of cheating. She threw his things out the window of her apartment." The whole dramatic scene. I was surprised by my own reaction, not satisfaction or vindication, but a strange, hollow emptiness. "I can't say I'm shocked," I finally replied. Stephanie never wanted Ryan. She just wanted to take him from me. What are you going to do? Jessica asked. If Ryan tries to contact you again. I considered the question carefully. Nothing, I said. They're both dead to me. But even as I said the words, a small, dark part of me was forming a different plan entirely. The revelation of Ryan and Stephanie's breakup shifted something inside me. For months, I'd been focused solely on healing, on moving forward despite the gaping wound they'd left in my life. But now a new possibility emerged, not just recovery, but retribution. I didn't act immediately. Instead, I continued my self-improvement journey with renewed purpose. I hired a personal trainer and dedicated myself to fitness, shedding the stress weight I'd gained during the worst of my depression. I took on high-profile projects at work, earning a promotion that came with a substantial raise. I expanded my social circle, making friends who had no connection to my previous life with Ryan or knowledge of Stephanie's betrayal. On the surface, I was thriving, the perfect image of a woman who had overcome heartbreak and emerged stronger. But beneath that carefully constructed facade, I was strategizing. 3 months after learning of their breakup, I orchestrated a chance encounter with Ryan. I knew from social media that he frequented a particular coffee shop near his office on Tuesday mornings. Dressed in a flattering business suit that showcased my newly toned figure. Hair and makeup perfectly done, I walked in at precisely 8:15 a.m., timing my arrival to coincide with his usual schedule. The look on his face when he saw me was worth every punishing workout. Every late night at the office, every tear I'd shed alone in my apartment. Shock, admiration, and unmistakable regret flashed across his features before he could compose himself. "Amber," he said, standing awkwardly beside his table. "You look amazing." "Ryan," I acknowledged coolly, as though I'd barely noticed him. "Thank you. How have you been?" he asked. His voice tinged with the nervousness of someone who knows they've done irreparable harm. "Better than ever," I replied with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "Excuse me. I need to grab my coffee. I'm running late for a meeting." I turned away, ordering my drink and deliberately engaging in a friendly conversation with the barista, letting Ryan see how easily I could be warm and engaging with everyone but him. As I prepared to leave with my latte, he stepped into my path. "Amber, wait. Could we talk sometime? Please?" I've wanted to reach out for months, but I didn't think you'd want to hear from me. I pretended to consider his request. "I don't know, Ryan. What could we possibly have to talk about after all this time?" "I made the biggest mistake of my life," he said quietly. "Not a day goes by that I don't regret what I did to you." For a moment, I allowed genuine pain to show on my face. "You didn't just do something to me, Ryan. You and Stephanie destroyed me. Do you have any idea what that was like?" "No," he admitted, looking ashamed. "I can't imagine. But please, just one conversation. Let me at least apologize properly." I took out my business card and handed it to him. "I have a dinner meeting tonight, but I'm free tomorrow after work. Text me if you're serious." Then I walked out, feeling his eyes on me the entire way. That evening, the expected text came through. We arranged to meet at a neutral location, a quiet bar downtown that we'd never visited together during our relationship. I deliberately arrived 15 minutes late, wanting him to wonder if I'd changed my mind. When I finally walked in, he stood immediately, relief evident on his face. He looked good, I had to admit, a little thinner perhaps, with new lines around his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said as I sat across from him. "I almost didn't," I replied honestly. What followed was Ryan's confession and apology. He explained how Stephanie had pursued him relentlessly, how she'd played on his sympathies with stories of her loneliness and depression, how she'd made him feel needed in a way that appealed to his ego. He admitted that he'd been weak and selfish, that he'd betrayed not just my love, but my trust. "She never loved me," he said, staring into his barely touched scotch. Once she had me, she lost interest. She'd start fights over nothing, accuse me of still having feelings for you, flirt with other men in front of me. It was like once she'd won, the prize didn't matter anymore. That sounds like Stephanie, I said, allowing a small, sad smile. She's always been like that, even when we were kids. She'd beg for a toy I had, then toss it aside once our parents made me share. I was just a toy to her, Ryan said bitterly. A way to hurt you. And you let her use you that way. I pointed out, keeping my voice even. Yes, he acknowledged. I have no excuse. I threw away the best thing in my life for nothing. We talked for hours. I let him see glimpses of my pain, carefully measured to make him understand the depth of his betrayal without revealing how thoroughly he had broken me. I told him about the therapy I'd needed. The nights I couldn't sleep, the trust issues I now carried into every new interaction. With each revelation, I watched guilt and regret deepen on his face. By the end of the evening, Ryan was practically begging for another chance. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, much less a second chance, he said as we prepared to leave. But I've never stopped loving you, Amber. What we had was real. I was just too stupid and weak to protect it. I studied him carefully. I don't know if I can ever trust you again, Ryan. And I don't know if I want to try. Please, he said softly. Just think about it. I'm not asking for an answer tonight. Take all the time you need. I'll wait. I nodded noncommittally. Good night, Ryan. Over the next few weeks, Ryan pursued me with the dedication of a man seeking redemption. There were thoughtful text messages, never pushing but always gently reminding me of his presence. Flowers delivered to my office. A book I'd mentioned wanting to read appearing at my door. He was careful never to overwhelm me, respecting my boundaries while making his intentions clear. I kept him at arm's length, agreeing to occasional coffee meetings that gradually extended to dinners. I let him see my hesitation, my lingering hurt, the walls I'd built around my heart. Each time he proved himself trustworthy in some small way, I allowed him a fraction closer. My friends were concerned. Jessica in particular was adamant that I was making a mistake. After what he did, she demanded during our weekly lunch. Amber, he slept with your sister. There's no coming back from that. People make mistakes, I said, watching her reaction carefully. Forgetting your anniversary is a mistake. Sleeping with your girlfriend's sister is a deliberate choice made multiple times, she countered. Are you really considering taking him back, or are you just torturing him? Because if it's the latter, I fully support it. I smiled enigmatically. I'm just seeing where this goes. What I didn't tell Jessica was that I'd already made my decision. I would give Ryan a second chance, not because I believed in redemption or because I couldn't live without him, but because I knew exactly how much it would destroy Stephanie to see him choose me after everything she'd done to tear us apart. It was the perfect revenge, letting my sister watch as the man she'd schemed and manipulated to steal returned to me willingly, lovingly, choosing me over her not once, but twice. I would reclaim what she had taken, not because I couldn't live without it, but because I refused to let her win. 6 months after our first reconnection, I finally agreed to officially restart our relationship. Ryan was overjoyed, treating me with a reverence and appreciation he'd never shown during our first time together. He was transparent about his whereabouts, open with his phone, and made consistent efforts to rebuild the trust he'd shattered. And all the while, I made sure news of our renewed relationship filtered back to Stephanie through mutual friends and family members. I posted carefully selected photos on social media, knowing she would see them. I mentioned Ryan casually in conversations with my parents, who had given up trying to maintain neutrality when Stephanie's behavior after the breakup had revealed her true character. The stage was set for the final act of my revenge. All I needed was for Stephanie to make her inevitable appearance. The opportunity for a direct confrontation came sooner than I expected. My parents decided to host a 4th of July barbecue, inviting extended family and friends to their backyard in suburban Massachusetts. They asked if Ryan and I would attend, cautiously mentioning that Stephanie would also be there. "It's been over a year, Amber," my mother said during our phone conversation. "We're not asking you to be best friends with her, but your father and I would love to have our whole family together for one holiday." I paused, pretending to consider. "Will she be bringing anyone?" "No," my mother replied, a note of concern in her voice. "She's not seeing anyone right now. She's been struggling a bit lately." Perfect, I thought. Out loud, I said, "Ryan and I will be there, Mom. But don't expect miracles." Ryan was nervous when I told him about the invitation. "Are you sure about this?" "I don't want to cause more family drama. It's time," I said firmly. "We can't avoid her forever. Besides, we have nothing to be ashamed of." The day of the barbecue dawned bright and clear. I dressed carefully in a sundress that highlighted my toned figure, applying makeup that enhanced rather than masked my features. Ryan looked handsome in khaki shorts and a light blue button-down that brought out the green in his hazel eyes. We arrived fashionably late, making an entrance when the backyard was already filled with relatives and family friends. The conversation lulled momentarily as we walked through the gate, all eyes turning to us. My father recovered first, coming forward to shake Ryan's hand with a warmth that suggested all was forgiven. My mother hugged me tightly, whispering, "Thank you for coming." Before leading us toward the drinks table, I spotted Stephanie almost immediately. She was standing alone near the grill, a plastic cup clutched tightly in her hand. Her expression frozen in shock at the sight of Ryan beside me. She looked terrible, her hair dull, dark circles under her eyes poorly concealed with makeup, her sundress hanging loosely on a frame that had grown too thin. I smiled at her from across the yard, a small, victorious curl of my lips that I knew she would understand perfectly. Then I deliberately turned away, introducing Ryan to relatives he hadn't yet met, laughing at their jokes, accepting their thinly veiled references to our difficult time with gracious nods. Throughout the afternoon, I was careful to keep Ryan close, my hand on his arm, his around my waist. We moved through the party as a united front, the picture of a couple who had weathered a storm and emerged stronger. All the while, I was acutely aware of Stephanie watching us, her expression growing darker with each display of affection between us. It took 3 hours and several glasses of wine before she finally approached. Ryan tensed beside me as she walked over, but I squeezed his hand reassuringly. "Amber," she said, her voice brittle. "Ryan, how nice to see you both." "Stephanie," I replied coolly, "you're looking, well." She ignored the obvious lie. "I'm surprised to see you here together. Mom didn't mention you were back together." "We've been back together for months," I said, allowing genuine happiness to color my tone. "It's been wonderful, hasn't it, Ryan?" "Better than ever," he agreed, his arm tightening around my waist. Stephanie's smile was tight, her eyes glassy with unshed tears and alcohol. "How nice. I'm happy for you." "Are you?" I asked softly. Something in my tone must have triggered her because suddenly the facade cracked. "You're doing this to hurt me, aren't you?" she hissed, dropping all pretense. "You took him back just to show that you could." Ryan started to respond, but I placed a gentle hand on his chest. "This isn't about you, Stephanie. It never was. Ryan and I love each other. We're building a life together. Your opinion on that is irrelevant." "He was with me," she insisted, her voice rising slightly. "He chose me over you." "No," Ryan interjected firmly. "I made a terrible mistake that I'll regret for the rest of my life. I never chose you, Stephanie. I was weak and selfish, and I hurt the woman I truly love. But I never loved you." Stephanie's face contorted with rage and humiliation. "You weren't saying that when you were in my bed." She spat. Several nearby relatives turned at her outburst, expressions ranging from shock to uncomfortable recognition of the family drama unfolding. "I think you've had too much to drink," I said evenly. "Maybe you should go inside and lie down." Don't patronize me, she snapped. You've always thought you were better than me. Perfect Amber with her perfect job and perfect boyfriend. Well, he wasn't so perfect when he was screwing your sister, was he? The yard went silent. My mother appeared at Stephanie's elbow, her face tight with embarrassment and anger. That's enough, Stephanie. You're making a scene. I'm making a scene. Stephanie laughed bitterly. What about them? Parading around like nothing happened? Like he didn't betray her with me? Like I don't even matter. You don't, I said quietly, the words carrying in the silence. Not to us. Not anymore. Stephanie lunged toward me, but my father caught her arm, preventing what would have been a very public assault. Inside. Now, he ordered, his voice broking no argument as he guided her firmly toward the house. As they disappeared inside, the murmurs around the yard gradually resumed, though the atmosphere remained tense. My mother looked at us apologetically. I'm so sorry, she said. I hoped she could handle seeing you two together. It's not your fault, Mrs. Collins, Ryan assured her. Stephanie has always had trouble accepting consequences for her actions. The remainder of the barbecue passed without further incident. Stephanie didn't reemerge from the house, and when we left several hours later, my father mentioned he'd called her a rideshare to take her home since she was in no condition to drive. In the car, Ryan was unusually quiet. Finally, as we approached the city, he spoke. That was awful. I knew she'd be upset, but I didn't expect that level of viciousness. She always was a sore loser, I remarked, watching the city lights appear on the horizon. Ryan glanced at me. Is that what this is to you? A competition you've won? I considered my answer carefully. No. This is us choosing each other despite everything. This is me refusing to let her actions define our future. He seemed satisfied with my response, but as we drove in silence, I allowed myself a small, private smile. The barbecue had gone even better than I'd planned. Stephanie had revealed her true nature to everyone, burning bridges I hadn't even needed to touch. Her humiliation had been complete and public, witnessed by everyone whose opinion she claimed to value. 2 weeks later, Ryan surprised me by taking me to dinner at Menton, one of Boston's most exclusive restaurants. He seemed nervous throughout the meal, checking his pocket repeatedly, stumbling over simple conversation topics. I knew what was coming even before he dropped to one knee beside our table, producing a ring that caught the candlelight in dazzling sparkles. Amber Collins, he said. His voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. I know I don't deserve a second chance with you, but you gave me one anyway. I promise to spend every day of the rest of my life proving that your faith in me isn't misplaced. Will you marry me? The restaurant had gone quiet, other diners watching expectantly. I let tears fill my eyes, genuine tears, because despite everything, despite my initial motivations for reconciling with Ryan, I realized I did still love him. The revenge against Stephanie had been sweet, but it wasn't the only reason I was here in this moment. Yes, I said simply, extending my trembling hand. As he slipped the ring onto my finger, a platinum band with a stunning emerald-cut diamond, the restaurant erupted in applause. Ryan kissed me, and I kissed him back, allowing myself to fully embrace the happiness I'd been holding at arm's length. Later that night, as we celebrated in his apartment, I posted a photo of the ring on Instagram with a simple caption. Second chances can be even better than firsts. #engaged, #foreverlove. I knew Stephanie would see it. I knew it would hurt her more than anything else I could have done. But as I set my phone aside and turned to the man who would be my husband, I realized something unexpected. I didn't care anymore. Stephanie's pain was no longer my priority. My happiness was. The final piece of my revenge played out at our engagement party 2 months later. My parents insisted on hosting, and despite my mother's hesitation, I suggested including Stephanie on the guest list. Are you sure? My mother asked, concern evident in her voice. After what happened at the barbecue, she's still family. I said magnanimously. And I'm moving forward with my life. This is me extending an olive branch. The night of the party, Stephanie arrived late, sober and subdued. She'd made an effort with her appearance, her hair freshly styled, wearing a dress that must have been new. She approached us as we greeted guests, offering a stiff congratulations. "Thank you for coming," I said, my smile genuine. "It means a lot to have family here." She nodded, unable to meet my eyes. "You look happy," she observed quietly. "I am," I confirmed. "Happier than I've ever been." As she moved away to get a drink, Ryan squeezed my hand. "That was gracious of you." "Life's too short for grudges," I replied, watching Stephanie retreat to a corner of the room. Besides, the best revenge isn't making someone suffer. It's being happy despite their best efforts to destroy you. As the evening progressed, I watched Stephanie watching us, saw her flinch each time Ryan kissed me, noted her forced smile when guests asked about wedding plans, observed her gradual withdrawal as it became clear to everyone that Ryan and I were genuinely in love. By the time she left early, slipping out without saying goodbye, I felt nothing but pity for her. She had tried to take something precious from me out of jealousy and spite, but in the end, she had only succeeded in losing her sister, damaging her relationship with our parents, and revealing her true character to everyone who mattered. My revenge was complete, but more importantly, so was my healing. I had reclaimed not just Ryan, but myself, stronger, wiser, and ready for the future we would build together. As our wedding day approached, I found myself in a strange emotional space. The satisfaction of seeing Stephanie's scheme ultimately fail had faded, leaving me with unexpected questions about my own motivations and actions. Had I really taken Ryan back because I loved him? Or had my desire for revenge against Stephanie been the driving force? The question haunted me enough that I finally brought it up during a session with Dr. Warner, the therapist I'd been seeing since the initial betrayal. "I'm worried that I've been using Ryan," I admitted, twisting my engagement ring nervously. "That I reconnected with him primarily to hurt Stephanie rather than because I truly forgave him." Dr. Warner considered this. "Motivations are rarely simple, Amber. It's possible both things are true, that you wanted to reclaim what was taken from you, and that you still had genuine feelings for Ryan. The important question is, how do you feel about him now?" I thought carefully before answering. "I love him. When I imagine my future, he's in it. But sometimes I wonder if our relationship is built on a rotten foundation. Can something that began partly as revenge ever be truly healthy?" "That depends on whether you've been honest with yourself and with Ryan," she replied. "Does he know that hurting Stephanie was part of your motivation for reconciling?" "No," I admitted. "I've never told him that." "Perhaps that's a conversation worth having before you walk down the aisle," she suggested gently. I left that session determined to have complete honesty with Ryan, no matter the consequences. That weekend, while we were spending a quiet evening at my apartment, I gathered my courage and broached the subject. "Ryan, I need to tell you something about when we got back together," I began. My heart racing, something I'm not proud of. His expression grew concerned. "What is it?" I took a deep breath. "When you first approached me about reconciling, I wasn't just thinking about us. I was also thinking about how it would affect Stephanie, how it would hurt her to see you choose me again." Ryan was silent for a long moment. "You wanted revenge," he finally said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," I admitted. "At least partially. After everything she did, I wanted her to suffer. And seeing you with me again, knowing you chose me willingly this time, I knew that would devastate her." "And now," he asked quietly, "is that still why you're with me? To keep hurting her?" "No," I said firmly, reaching for his hand. "That's what I'm trying to tell you. What started partly as revenge has become something real and honest. I love you, Ryan. I want to marry you because of who we are together, not because of what it does to Stephanie." "But you still haven't completely forgiven me," he observed. I considered denying it, then decided honesty was more important. I'm still working on that, I acknowledged. But I'm choosing to love you anyway. I'm choosing to build a future with you despite the past. Ryan was quiet for so long I began to worry I'd made a terrible mistake in confessing. Finally, he spoke. Thank you for telling me the truth, he said. I don't think I have the right to judge you for wanting revenge, considering what I did. At least your motivations were somewhat justified. Does it change how you feel about marrying me? I asked, vulnerability evident in my voice. No, he said, squeezing my hand. If anything, it makes me more certain. We're both coming into this with our eyes open now. No more secrets. No more hidden agendas. The relief I felt was profound. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt truly unburdened. Like we had finally cleared away the last of the toxic debris from our past and could move forward on solid ground. 2 weeks before our wedding, I received a text from Stephanie asking to meet. My first instinct was to refuse, but after discussing it with both Ryan and Dr. Warner, I agreed to coffee at a neutral location. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups in front of her. I got you a latte, she said as I sat down. 2 pumps of vanilla, no foam. You still take it that way, right? I was surprised she remembered. Yes, thanks. An awkward silence fell between us. Finally, Stephanie spoke. I'm not coming to the wedding. I know, I replied. Mom told me you declined the invitation. I wanted to tell you myself and explain why. She took a deep breath. It's not because I'm still in love with Ryan or because I'm jealous, though I know that's what everyone thinks. It's because I need to stop being the person I've been my whole life, and I can't do that while trying to pretend everything's normal between us. I studied her, looking for signs of manipulation or self-pity, but found only what appeared to be genuine regret. What do you mean, the person you've been? I asked. The person who's always measuring herself against you. The person who defines her worth by what you have that she doesn't. She looked down at her coffee. I've been seeing a therapist. She's helping me understand why I've always been so competitive with you, why I've never been able to just be happy for you without feeling diminished somehow. I wasn't sure how to respond. This level of self-awareness was new territory for Stephanie. I did a terrible thing to you, she continued when I remained silent. Unforgivable, really. I told myself it was because I loved Ryan, but that was a lie. I hardly knew him. I just wanted to take something that made you happy because I couldn't stand seeing you have something I didn't. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because I'm trying to change, and that starts with honesty. I'm moving to Chicago next month. New job, new city, clean slate. No more living in my sister's shadow, real or imagined. She attempted a smile. I want you to know I'm happy for you and Ryan. You deserve the life you're building together. I considered her words carefully. I appreciate you telling me this, Stephanie. I hope you find what you're looking for in Chicago. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she clarified. I know that's too much to expect. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did and I'm trying to be better. As we parted ways outside the coffee shop, I felt a strange lightness. Not forgiveness, I wasn't ready for that, but perhaps the first step toward a different kind of relationship someday, one built on mutual respect rather than competition. Our wedding day arrived on a perfect September afternoon. The ceremony was held in the Boston Public Garden, surrounded by early autumn foliage and the people we loved most. Stephanie wasn't there. But she had sent a gift, a beautiful silver frame containing a photo of us as children, arms around each other, smiling without a hint of the competition that would later define our relationship. The note simply read, "Remember when it was simple. Wishing you both all the happiness in the world. Love, Steph." As Ryan and I exchanged vows, I felt the last pieces of my revenge plot finally dissolve. This moment wasn't about Stephanie, or what she had done, or how I had made her pay. It was about Ryan and me choosing each other despite our flaws and mistakes, about building something new from the wreckage of what had been destroyed. At the reception, My father gave a toast that brought tears to my eyes. To second chances, he said, raising his glass. Not just between Amber and Ryan, but in all relationships that matter. To the courage it takes to forgive and the wisdom to know when to try again. Later that night, as Ryan and I shared our first dance as husband and wife, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. What had begun as a desire for revenge had transformed into something I hadn't expected, genuine healing, not just for me, but for all of us. I had wanted to make Stephanie watch Ryan fall for me again, to hurt her as she had hurt me. In the end, I had accomplished that. But the victory felt hollow compared to the real triumph, finding my way back to love and trust after believing both were lost to me forever. The true lesson wasn't in the satisfaction of revenge, but in the realization that the best response to betrayal isn't to betray in return. It's to rebuild something stronger, more honest, and more resilient than what was broken. As we swayed to the music, surrounded by people who had supported us through our darkest times, I leaned my head against Ryan's shoulder and whispered, "I'm glad we found our way back to each other." "Me too," he murmured, holding me closer. "Every day for the rest of our lives, I'll make sure you never regret giving us a second chance." In that moment, I knew with certainty that I already didn't. What's your take on this story? Have you ever been betrayed by someone close to you? And if so, how did you handle it? Do you believe in second chances after betrayal, or are some lines that can't be uncrossed? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share with friends who might find it meaningful. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes the most powerful response to pain isn't revenge, but rebuilding something beautiful from the ashes.